thank you all for coming. I'm Ken. I'm not using up my time to introduce myself. 30 years ago, I was in a bar in Kamloops, British Columbia, and some guy across the room paid for our drinks, unexpectedly, no particular reason. And we went over afterwards to thank him. And he was sitting at the table with a stack of several $100s of $20 bills in front of him. And we sort of said, thank you very much. And he said, well, I won the lottery. He won $1 million at a time when $1 million was something. And in fact, what had happened was his family had divided bitterly. His wife had left him, his kids weren't talking to him, and he basically said, I'm going to spend all of this because I can't sort of deal with it any other way. Canada's won a lottery. We've won the energy lottery. There is no place in the world that has the mix of oil, gas, hydro, renewable resources, nuclear energy that we have in this country. This could be a foundation for something truly great. In fact, it has become a national battleground. And we are fighting over energy in ways that are unproductive, counterproductive, and destructive, I think, of the sense of being Canadian and the sense of having Canadian collective responsibilities. I think energy should be a community building, a nation building enterprise. We could look at how we use energy resources in new and different and constructive ways. We can capitalize on the fact that we have energy that the rest of the world is envious of. Think a little bit about the points of conflict we have right now. And in fact, there are some very severe rifts, I think, developing within the Canadian community. The struggle between environmentalists and the energy sector are getting pronounced, the Northern Gateway Pipeline being perhaps the best example, but only one of many, many such instances. There's a rural and northern versus urban sort of reality. Places like the Greater Toronto Area love to consume energy, but don't worry too much about where it comes from. Places in the north and in the rural areas where they develop this energy need it for economic development. There's a very strong struggle emerging between central Canada and the West. I live in Saskatchewan now, and the attitudes in the West towards central Canada are sometimes not pleasant. There's a First Nations issue around natural resources and their participation in the natural resource sector that has led at times to conflict with government and with business, but also cooperation and collaboration. We have an area filled with stereotypes, often very hostile stereotypes. For the last 4 years, I've been working with a group in Fort McMurray. I'm amazed at how many opinions people have about Fort McMurray when they've never been there. They know everything about it. They watch FUBAR. If you haven't seen FUBAR, please don't. It's a terrible, terrible show. But people have nonetheless decided what Fort McMurray is all about. Fort McMurray is a community destined to be a 100-year community. They are not a boom town the way they're described. The people who are living there are simply trying to make money so they can leave right away. Some do, obviously. But it actually has a core of people who are trying very hard to stabilize their community, to build this into a long-term, stable, and systematic sense. Fort McMurray should be a focus for our country, not a point of ridicule and anger at times. So we have options as we contemplate the future of Canada and its energy resources. We have the petrostate model. This is one that you distort the country based on the wealth that's generated, the rapid wealth, the intense wealth that's generated by petroleum in particular, the Venezuelan sort of model. We have the UAE Qatar model. I was in Qatar last year, and it's an amazing, amazing place. They are spending enormous sums of money building the next economy. They've realized they can add the numbers, they can see how long the oil and gas will last, and they realize they have to build the next economy. They have built such things as an absolute world-class athletic training and rehabilitation center, because they realize that 10, 15 years down the line, they will need 15 or 20 of those kinds of things to sustain their economy. If you go to the UAE or Dubai or Abu Dhabi, you'll actually see places that have basically building luxury. Whether it's with museums and galleries or things of that sort, essentially creating that kind of a model. You have the Norwegian model, one that we should pay an awful lot more attention to. Norway is a very responsible social democratic country. Its development is very responsible, environmentally sensitive, and well planned. They have taken the energy resources and transformed their country into one of the most stable, long-term, passionately nationalistic countries you could ever imagine. Norwegians don't brag very much. They're not very demonstrative. They are extremely proud of what they've done with their energy resources, essentially endowing their social programs well into the future. They've used energy properly and positively. The way we get started on this, I think, is by being realistic and being self-aware. We're not very self-aware in Canada. We're In fact, kind of naive about all of this. Unless you haven't noticed, and I say this from Saskatoon, Canada gets cold a lot of the year. We will always be the world's most intense user of energy resources. We are a very large country, huge distances to go from one place to the other. Airline travel is much more efficient than driving a car, or certainly taking a bicycle. We are also not doing very well at using our energy resources. The joy of coming into the GTA is to see how a wonderful city can mismanage transit more effectively than any place on the planet. I say this having spent a lot of time in Japan over the years and watching their wonderful system develop. We have attempts at renewable energy that are oftentimes laughable, politically poorly managed. We are not doing very well at capitalizing on the opportunities we see before us. So my challenge to you is to suggest that we should use energy as a nation-building tool. We have a resource that the rest of the world wants. We have to get beyond the anger and the finger pointing that is absolutely commonplace in the energy sector. Watching the people talk about everything from the Northern Gateway to oil sands in the Fort McMurray region to uranium in northern Saskatchewan. We can build a different national future if we do it properly. It's not going to be easy. Federal-provincial relationships are a real drag on Canadian innovation and creativity, but we can strike a balance. Energy gives us growth opportunities, the like of which we simply cannot imagine, billions and billions of dollars of investment. Energy will give us revenue that will actually support our social system and our government structures for decades and generations to come if we do it properly. We can use the resources that we have and the money that comes in to build a brand new energy future. Energy is Canada's lottery winning. We have to use it as a foundation for long-term prosperity and a focus for nation building. Thank you very much.